Hey there, I'm Todd on High, and today I'm showcasing a build for the Division 2. I call it the Anchor, mostly because I use a Providence backpack, and it's a very effective build for farming challenging missions in groups. The Anchor relies on the gear talents of Overwatch and Composure, but also heavily leans on the strengths of the named Stoner LAMG Quiet Roar. Before we dive into the details though, let's talk about the reasons why this build is necessary. Everybody knows that since Title Update 8, the difficulty of the game has increased overall. Some enemies became bullet sponges and so on, and it became even more important for you to be playing the difficulty level appropriate for your gear. We can all have our opinions about these adjustments, but even with Title Update 9's balance changes, we're still not as powerful as we used to be. The Anchor build seeks to compensate for this by doing three things. 1. Supporting your teammates by increasing everyone's damage by 12 to 24%. 2. Supporting your teammates by slowing, suppressing, and killing as many enemies as you can. And 3. Supporting your teammates by surviving longer and by tossing your revive hive when needed, though this, of course, is optional. I'd also like to say going in that this build is really just a template. If there are aspects of it that don't work for you or your playstyle, or you just don't have the right roles to do it exactly as I've outlined here, try something different. That includes trying a gear set, exotics, different combinations of attributes, whatever you think will serve you best. I'd also be curious to hear about any experiences you've had with this build, especially with multiple anchors in the same group, or trying to use this with a skill build. So feel free to report back if you get any use out of this. Bottom line, the Division 2 ignores the RPG role trinity in a lot of ways. This is a shooting game, so a full healer build is automatically at a disadvantage due to their low gun damage and lack of skill damage. Nor is a healer really necessary for challenging content, or as I like to call it, farming difficulty. Similarly, there is no concept of tanking outside of shield usage. There is very little in the way of threat mechanics in Division 2, and there's no manipulation of the mechanics that do exist. So we're essentially all damage dealers to one extent or another. My goal in this game, what I enjoy most, is efficient farming. I don't PvP as it doesn't interest me, and I'm terrible at it, so it's just PvE, and a lot of what I do is just farm gear at challenging difficulty. I really only do heroic or legendary content with friends, for bragging rights or backpack trophies. So now you know, I'm a filthy casual with well over 1,000 hours in this game, but at least I care about getting through content faster. One huge cause of slowdowns in farming is players not pulling their weight. I'm not talking about AFK people. I'm talking about players queuing for level 40 challenging content while still wearing level 30 gear and or not even being in all high ends. Without pointing any fingers, it became clear fairly quickly once Title Update 8 hit that people were matchmaking for difficulty levels higher than they were equipped or prepared for. While this is inherent in any game that has matchmaking, the new watch level made it immediately apparent, and it was becoming quite the obstacle to my efficient farming. Originally, I was messing with a DPS build, as that's typically what sort of player I am. But it became very common to find myself in a group of all meta DPS builds. You know the ones I'm talking about: classic M1A or Baker's Dozen, perfect glass cannon, contractors, Fox's Prayer, etc. Pro tip, you can often tell what someone is running just by looking at how many pips of armor and which skills they have. With 4 DPS players, once one of us went down, it became a slaughter pretty quickly. I tried a skill build, but since elites are acrobats who psychically dodge your incoming grenades and seeker mines, that proved to be likewise ineffective. So I decided to try more of a support approach, and the Anchor very quickly became my favorite build for the Division 2 matchmaking and farming. Once I decided to go with this Anchor build and started tweaking it, challenging missions mostly became a joke. With calm play, you can really do a lot, but this build does have its limitations as far as being able to carry 3 other people outright. Elites and named enemies on challenge still hit incredibly hard, especially if you're standing out of cover, and the tide of battle can turn on a dime, so your mileage may vary. Still, I've heard multiple players use the phrase, "Are you sure this is on challenging?" while I've been in the group on this build, which to me is a soft indicator of how much of a difference it can make. The reason for this is obviously Overwatch, which grants 12% weapon damage and 12% skill damage to all of your group members. This takes effect 10 seconds after you take cover, and stays in effect so long as you stay in cover, including cover-to-cover moves. To me, this actually makes the game a bit more fun. Figuring out how to advance while keeping the buff up is like its own little mini-game. Plus, you move faster and take less damage than popping out of cover and sprinting. To remind you to stay in cover as long as possible, Composure is there to give you an immediate buff as soon as you do stick to it. For the version of this build I play with, I lean into blue attributes, so that I'm able to pop out of cover and fire the Stoner for longer periods. This does not mean you can face tank, because no matter how much armor you stack, it's really not that much when compared to the damage that enemies can do. As an all red or all yellow build with only 600 to 700,000 armor, or as I like to call it, 12 pips, you really can only take a few bullets on challenging, especially from elites, snipers, and warhounds. Having that extra padding makes it possible to keep up your stream of fire longer, suppressing and damaging more enemies before having to duck, heal, or reload. The two primary buffs give you the equivalent of 2 red attributes, which equates to 27% weapon damage. So rather than a 2-4-0 build, I'm playing more of a 4-4-0 build. Plus, all your teammates receive the 12% weapon damage buff as well. Not only that, but skill build players get to double dip because their skills are 12% stronger too, not just their guns. It's a massive damage increase when used properly, and that is literally just for being present for the mission and remembering to stay in cover. It's more than a lot of randoms contribute, believe me. Unfortunately, since most DPS players use the Fixer Drone and Revive Hive, they don't benefit from the skill damage buff, nor would they with a tier 0 skill anyway. But the build doesn't stop there. The Quiet Roar has a great rate of fire, and by suppressing certain enemies on purpose, like red bars and long-range hiding enemies like snipers, you can stack up to 4 12% damage increases, though these only apply to you. That's almost a 50% damage increase on top of your gear buffs. If you don't have a decent Quiet Roar, a regular Stoner LAMG will work just fine. Other LMGs will also work, but I prefer the large mag size of the Stoner. Use whatever second weapon you want to bring, preferably something more accurate than an LMG. I typically run with either a P416 or G36, but feel free to bring your beloved M1A if you like. The 200-round Stoner is ideal for clogging spawn points and doorways with bullets, slowing rushers down and suppressing non-rushers, as well as punishing out-of-cover enemies in general. Of course, your actual DPS will depend on your aim, attributes, and playstyle, but the effect of an LMG in the right hands is immediate and measurable. Plus, with the gunner spec and optional gear pieces like Sawyer's knee pads, you can get even more buffs for staying in cover and not moving. Personally, I'd rather not use the exotic in this case, since, as one Redditor put it, staying still for 10 seconds is not fun. Though, staying in cover for 10 plus seconds is really just how the game is played. The skills I use for this build are the Chem Launcher and the Revive Hive as a default, though the Hive is very optional, particularly if you get in a good group. As an alternative, Scanner Pulse or Disrupt Pulse is an easy one to switch out, as both are useful even at skill tier 0, though the latter will require more movement and proximity to enemies than this build is designed for. Your chosen skills will dictate what your secondary attributes should be. I put them into Repair skills, Explosive Resistance, Hazard Protection, and Crit Chance and Damage, but you may want a different spread. Stats like health and status effects are worthless with this build, but again, you don't have to follow my specs precisely. Keep tweaking until you find the best combination for your playstyle. And that's it. If you have any questions about the build or spot any major errors, let me know, and definitely circle back with a comment if you try this build out. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoy this sort of content, please drop a like and subscribe. Good luck out there, agents, and happy farming!